The sky above Los Angeles turns white. Within 9 seconds, over 140,000 people no longer exist. Their homes, vaporized. Their shadows, burned into concrete. This isn't science fiction. It's based on Cold War simulations updated with today's urban sprawl and population density. What happens when a nuclear weapon of unprecedented power meets one of Earth's most infamous fault lines? What kind of bomb are we talking about? A 50-megaton thermonuclear bomb is an ultra-high-yield hydrogen weapon, never used in combat, but studied and once tested in reduced form by the Soviets with the Tsar Bomba. It releases energy equal to 210 petajoules, or roughly over 500,000 lightning bolts compressed into a single point, enough force to vaporize every building in San Francisco in under 3 seconds. The energy of every conventional bomb dropped during World War II detonated simultaneously in one place. The fireball alone would be wider than Manhattan. Imagine the entire island transformed into a sphere of plasma in seconds. This isn't just a bomb. It's an extinction-level event for anything within miles of ground zero. But what happens when this unimaginable power meets California's sleeping giant, the San Andreas Fault? Explosion mechanics. Second by second. Time, 0.0 to 0.5 seconds. The moment of detonation unleashes forces beyond human comprehension. A fireball nearly 8 kilometers wide expands instantly, reaching temperatures of tens of millions of degrees, hotter than the core of the sun. The air itself becomes plasma. Everything within 2 to 3 kilometers of ground zero simply ceases to exist. Entire neighborhoods disintegrate into their atomic components. People, buildings, infrastructure, all converted to energy in a fraction of a second. Time. The airburst shockwave accelerates outward at over twice the speed of sound. Within a 5-kilometer radius, overpressures exceed 20 psi, enough to pulverize even reinforced concrete structures. By the 10-15 kilometer mark, all conventional buildings collapse under 10 plus psi of pressure. Skyscrapers fold like playing cards. Nothing engineered by humans remains standing. Time, 2 to 10 seconds. As the blast expands, a wave of thermal radiation outpaces it. Anyone looking at the flash is instantly blinded. Third-degree burns occur up to 100 kilometers away in clear conditions. Within seconds, anything combustible ignites. Cars, trees, clothing, and homes burst into flames simultaneously across the region. The landscape transforms into a sea of fire. Time, 10 to 60 seconds. The pressure wave reflects off mountains and buildings, creating multiple shock fronts that collide in unpredictable ways. Areas seemingly protected might suddenly experience devastating pressure as waves combine. By the 1-minute mark, a towering mushroom cloud punches into the stratosphere, visible from hundreds of miles away. Fires coalesce into a raging firestorm that creates its own weather system. Would you know what to do in these crucial first seconds? The right action could mean the difference between life and death. What happens to Los Angeles? Los Angeles isn't just damaged. It's erased in layers, with destruction radiating outward like ripples in a nightmare. Vaporized zone, 0 to 3 kilometers. Within the innermost circle, nothing survives. The Walt Disney Concert Hall, City Hall, Grand Park, the Broad, iconic structures that define the LA skyline simply cease to exist. This isn't mere destruction, it's erasure. Even the concrete foundations are obliterated, leaving behind only a glassy crater where downtown once stood. Destroyed zone, 3-10 kilometers. Moving outward, structures remain recognizable for mere seconds before being torn apart. The Crypto.com arena, USC campus, and the entire arts district are shredded by overpressure. Critical infrastructure fails catastrophically. Every freeway overpass collapses simultaneously. The LA metro tunnels, designed to withstand earthquakes, implode under pressure that exceeds any seismic event in California's history. Burn zone, 10 to 30 kilometers. In this radius, most buildings remain standing, initially. But the thermal pulse ignites everything flammable simultaneously. Beverly Hills mansions, Santa Monica apartments, and Compton neighborhoods share the same fate as fires rage unchecked. Windows shatter before the pressure wave arrives. Asphalt softens and bubbles. The brush-covered hills surrounding LA become a ring of fire that would make evacuation nearly impossible. Sound and shock zone, 30 to 60 kilometers. The blast wave reaches Anaheim, Long Beach, and Burbank as a wall of sound and pressure. The boom is so powerful it ruptures eardrums and shatters windows across 5 counties simultaneously. Disneyland visitors would see a flash brighter than the sun, followed minutes later by a pressure wave strong enough to damage attractions and structures throughout the park. Would your neighborhood survive? The difference between life and death might be just a few miles. If you're watching this from Southern California, take a moment to consider your distance from the San Andreas Fault. It might be closer than you think. Hit subscribe now to see what happens in the critical hours after detonation, including the survival techniques that could save your life. Delivery method. How could this actually happen? While a 50-megaton weapon targeting the San Andreas Fault remains a theoretical scenario, military strategists have analyzed how such an attack could unfold. Most likely vectors. Submarine-launched ballistic missile, SLBM. A submarine lurking in the Pacific could launch a nuclear missile that reaches Los Angeles in minutes, with almost no warning. Military analysts have long considered scenarios where an adversary might target key infrastructure on the US West Coast using SLBMs launched from stealthy submarines offshore. With a flight time under 15 minutes from launch positions 200 miles off the California coast, civilians would receive virtually no effective warning, perhaps only an emergency alert seconds before impact. Hypersonic glide vehicle. Modern hypersonic weapons travel at over 5 times the speed of sound, while maintaining the ability to maneuver unpredictably, potentially evading NORAD detection systems until the final moments. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, these vehicles can approach from unexpected angles and altitudes, complicating defense efforts and reducing warning time to near zero. 3. Orbital bombardment, FOBs. Fractional orbital bombardment systems. Technology developed during the Cold War could place weapons in partial orbit, allowing them to approach from any direction, even from the south, where U.S. early warning coverage has historically been weaker. Recent intelligence suggests certain nations have reconsidered this technology with modern improvements, creating new strategic concerns for defense planners. First priority. Simulations from organizations like RAND and Sandia National Laboratories have consistently shown that Los Angeles ranks among the highest priority targets in first strike scenarios. This grim distinction comes from several factors. Critical military installations including Space Force Base Vandenberg and Naval Base San Diego. Dense concentration of critical infrastructure and technology centers. Enormous symbolic and economic impact, the second largest city in America. What makes this scenario particularly chilling? The attacker wouldn't need to aim specifically for the San Andreas Fault. Any strike on the greater Los Angeles area would put millions of lives at risk and potentially interact with this geological feature. What would happen in the minutes after detonation? Could anyone in Southern California survive such an event? Stay with us to find out. How realistic is this? Let's separate science from speculation. How feasible is our scenario in reality? The megaton reality. The Soviet Union's Tsar Bomba, tested at 50 megatons in 1961, remains the most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated. It was originally designed for 100 megatons, but was scaled back for practical reasons. Russia once had 100 megaton warheads on paper, but ultimately found them impractical due to poor yield-to-weight ratios and extreme political fallout, both radioactive and diplomatic. Today's arsenal. The largest deployed warheads today are approximately 800 kilotons to 1.2 megatons, a fraction of our scenario's yield, but still devastatingly powerful. The Russian SS-18, NATO codename Satan, and newer RS-28 Sarmat, Satan II, represent the upper end of current capabilities. While modern nuclear strategy has moved away from single high-yield weapons in favor of multiple smaller warheads, MIRVs, the physics behind larger yields remains well understood. A 50 megaton device could theoretically be deliverable by missile if advanced miniaturization technology were employed, but would represent a significant departure from current nuclear doctrine. Would an adversary specifically target the San Andreas Fault? Military strategists consider this unlikely. According to analysis by defense experts, military targets are typically population centers, command facilities, and military installations, not geological features. The energy required to trigger a major earthquake far exceeds even the largest nuclear weapons. The U.S. Geological Survey states that using explosives to trigger earthquakes is just not physically possible in any controlled way. At best, a nuclear detonation might trigger localized tremors, but not the big one on command. You're on I-10, near downtown, stuck in morning traffic. The radio host is complaining about the Lakers game last night. You check your watch, 9 a.m. Without warning, the entire sky turns white. There's no sound yet. Just an overwhelming brightness that makes your dashboard, the cars around you, everything disappear in the glare. You blink. 0.6 seconds later, the heat and pressure would be fatal before your brain could register what happened. Your car, the freeway, everything within miles, gone before your brain could even process what happened. The metal in your vehicle melts before the sound of the explosion could reach you. For those slightly further away, the experience would be different and potentially survivable. What would determine who lives and who dies? The answer might surprise you. Would you know what to do if you saw that flash? Comment below with your survival plan before we reveal the techniques that could save your life in our next section. The moment the missile launches, NORAD detection systems light up. Early warning satellites track the heat signature, but with a flight time under 15 minutes, there's no meaningful chance to intercept. Within seconds of detonation, seismic monitors worldwide register the blast. Nuclear detection systems confirm what just happened. America has been struck. The second strike. Just 12 minutes after the first explosion, as emergency services are still processing what happened, a second fireball blooms over the port of San Pedro, America's busiest shipping terminal. Two mushroom clouds now tower over Southern California. The unthinkable has become reality. A coordinated nuclear strike on American soil. Global response. Within hours, NATO invokes Article 5, an attack on one member is an attack on all. For only the second time in history after 9/11, the Collective Defense Clause activates. Global military alert levels escalate to DEFCON 1, the highest state of readiness. Nuclear-armed submarines receive emergency deployment orders. Bomber squadrons prepare for possible counterstrike missions. The nuclear triad, bombers, submarines, and missile silos, stands ready as presidential emergency protocols activate. The next decisions could determine whether this remains limited or escalates to global nuclear exchange. The days after. Day 1-2. Radioactive fallout clouds drift eastward over Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. The invisible killer travels with the wind, contaminating areas hundreds of miles from the blast zone. The electrical grid collapses across the western United States. The electromagnetic pulse from the detonations, combined with physical damage to infrastructure, creates a cascading failure. Cell networks go down, internet connectivity fails. Hospitals that remain standing are overwhelmed within hours. Burns, trauma, and radiation exposure create a triage nightmare with limited resources and staff. 37. Radiation sickness cases surge as people who were exposed begin showing symptoms: nausea, vomiting, hair loss, internal bleeding. Medical supplies run critically low. Food and water distribution systems collapse. Without refrigeration or transportation, supplies spoil or can't reach survivors. Water treatment facilities offline lead to contamination concerns. The National Guard mobilizes nationwide, but the scale of the disaster overwhelms even their capabilities. Personnel struggle to maintain order while addressing humanitarian needs. Week 2-4. As desperation grows, civil unrest erupts in affected areas and evacuation zones. Law enforcement, already stretched thin by casualties and rescue operations, struggles to maintain order. Hospitals remain beyond capacity. International aid workers arrive but face massive logistical challenges delivering help in radioactive zones. Scientists identify long-term fallout zones that will remain uninhabitable for years or decades. Some neighborhoods must be permanently abandoned, creating millions of nuclear refugees. Real-time timeline breakdown. At 0 seconds, the fireball ignites the atmosphere. By 1/10 of a second, the downtown core is completely vaporized. At 2 seconds, the shockwave has already reached 3 kilometers out. By 4 seconds, buildings begin collapsing at 5 kilometers distance. At 8 seconds, the thermal flash reaches 20 kilometers away, causing severe burns and igniting fires. By 15 seconds, firestorms begin developing across the region, and within just 1 to 2 minutes, fallout particles are already rising to the stratosphere, beginning their deadly drift across the country. What would you do? Call loved ones? Won't work. Cell towers and networks fail instantly from EMP and physical destruction. Shelter? You have under 10 seconds from flash to impact if you're within a few miles. Run? Useless without pre-planning. Roads become instantly gridlocked as millions try to flee simultaneously. If you live within 30 kilometers of the detonation site, your only real chance is being underground, behind concrete, or in a reinforced basement. Survival chances. Brutal reality. The brutal reality of survival chances. If you're in traffic, exposed within 10 kilometers, survival is nearly impossible in this zone. Even reinforced shelters would likely fail. Inside a wood frame home between 10 to 20 kilometers, less than 10% chance. In a concrete basement 20 to 40 kilometers away, your odds improve to 30 to 60%. Inside an LA Metro underground tunnel, if it's sealed before the blast, your chances rise to 65% or higher. One solid concrete wall could mean the difference between life and death. Global response timeline. Just 2 minutes after detonation, NATO nuclear forces go on high alert. By the 5-minute mark, the US launches retaliatory strike protocols. At 6 minutes, the UN Security Council calls an emergency session. At 12 minutes, the second strike hits the California coast. And within 1 hour, major world markets suspend all trading as the global economy braces for unprecedented shock. You're on the LA Metro. The lights flicker. What do you do? Would diving to the floor and covering your head save you? Let us know your survival plan in the comments. You live in this zone. The difference between survival and death might be just a few miles or one concrete wall. This was just one bomb, one moment, one city. But it could happen anywhere. Let us know in the comments and subscribe for the next simulation. What if a nuclear detonation happened over Paris, Tokyo, or Berlin? The science behind the scenarios that keep military planners awake at night.